In 1914, British explorer Sir Ernest Shackleton embarked on an ambitious expedition to cross Antarctica on foot, aiming to etch his name alongside Amundsen and Scott in the annals of heroism. His ship, Endurance, left England in August of that year, carrying 28 sailors and scientists, along with 69 trained sled dogs. The plan was simple: sail to the Weddell Sea, then deploy a team of 6 men to traverse 1,800 miles across the Antarctic continent. However, fate had prepared a trial beyond their imagination. By January 1915, Endurance had reached the edge of the ice in the Weddell Sea, but the Antarctic winter arrived early that year. The ice began closing around the ship like the claws of a demon, as one crew member described it. By January 24th, the ship was completely trapped in a thick, immovable ice floe. The men tried breaking the ice with saws and axes, but all their efforts were in vain. Their lives turned into a harsh weight as powerful winds pushed the ship and the surrounding ice farther away from land. For 10 months, the crew endured a life of extreme cold, minus 30 degrees Celsius, and complete darkness during the polar winter. They played football on the ice to lift their spirits and held evening sing-alongs, but hope began to fade as time passed. On October 27, 1915, the ice started crushing the ship's hull with unprecedented force, causing deep cracks. By November 21st, the wooden structure completely collapsed, and Endurance sank to the bottom of the frozen sea, leaving the men with 3 lifeboats and a small supply of food on fragile ice. The crew moved to a temporary camp they named Ocean Camp, where they built tents from salvaged ship sails. Their daily lives revolved around finding food. Seal and penguin meat became their only source of protein. Even the dogs that had accompanied them, once considered part of the family, had to be killed one by one to prevent starvation. The worst struggle was thirst. Melting salty ice was impossible, so they resorted to burning seal bones to extract fat and using it as fuel to melt fresh ice. On April 9, 1916, after nearly a year of being stranded, the ice around them began to break apart, forcing them to use the lifeboats. The men sailed across the raging Southern Ocean for 7 consecutive days, enduring freezing rain, 10-meter-high waves, and the lurking threats of killer whales. The journey was hellish. One of the boats was wrecked, and most of their supplies were lost. However, they finally reached Elephant Island, a barren, rocky land where no ships ever passed. On the island, Shackleton realized that staying meant certain death. He decided to undertake what seemed like a suicidal mission, sailing one of the lifeboats, which they named James Caird, across 800 miles of the world's most treacherous seas to reach South Georgia Island, where a Norwegian whaling station was located. He selected 5 men to accompany him, including Captain Frank Worsley, whose navigational skills were their only hope of reaching land. On April 24, 1916, the small boat, only 7 meters long, set off on a journey that lasted 16 days. They faced storms that nearly sank them, constant water leaks that forced them to take turns bailing out water day and night, and extreme cold that left their bodies cramping from exhaustion. They drank rainwater collected with cloth and ate frozen pieces of seal meat. On May 10th, they spotted storm petrels, a sign that land was near. However, reaching South Georgia was not the end. They had landed on the wrong side of the island and had to march 36 hours non-stop across uncharted mountains and glaciers without maps or climbing gear. They finally reached the whaling station on May 20th, where they collapsed from exhaustion. After saving themselves, Shackleton focused on rescuing the remaining men on Elephant Island. He attempted 3 times using different ships, but the ice thwarted every effort. Finally, on August 30th, 1916, he reached the island aboard a small Chilean vessel named Yelcho, where he found the 22 surviving men in a pitiful state, treating wounds with primitive tools and surviving on seaweed and the carcasses of dead whales that had washed ashore. One of them cried out upon seeing Shackleton, "You're coming for us?" Shackleton dryly replied, "We lost a small boat, sir," masking his tears of relief with a joke. Upon their return to England, there were no victory parades as the world was preoccupied with World War I. Yet, their story became a legend, studied in leadership and management books. The survivors wrote memoirs, and photographer Frank Hurley preserved their terrifying ordeal with 120 stunning images. Even the wreck of Endurance remained lost for 107 years until it was finally discovered in March 2022 off the coast of Antarctica, remarkably intact, as if silently witnessing the unbreakable will of the human spirit.